project here. Hold it a minute. I think we'll just start. It'll be very brief because you've got everything that you need on your with you. The press release basically tells you, all about the LitFest, and there's a program also. I just like to emphasize just a few points. One is that this is now the 7th Khushwant Singh Literary Festival. We began 7 years ago, and I think it was the first literary festival to start in Himachal Pradesh. And though there have been others which have subsequently come up, but I think we're the first continuous literary festival in Himachal. A lot of lit fests have come and gone, and except for the Jaipur one, which of course is a huge one, I think our lit fest, the Khushwant Singh Lit Fest, is the only one that has survived for so long. And not only survived, it is alive and kicking. We get more people coming every year, which is, to me, rather surprising. Nobody would have thought that a place like Kasauli would attract so many book lovers and people who want to listen to some of the leading writers and thinkers and celebrities. But we've been able to attract a lot of good writers, and what's more, attract a large audience. We began with, I think, about 200 people on our first year day, and now we're getting close to about 1,000 people coming from all over the region, of course, but other places as well. Bangalore, we had some people coming from Bangalore, and even abroad, we have people coming regularly from abroad. So that, I thought, would be the first thing, and it's also the only literary festival named after a person, which is, of course, Khushwant Singh. And we chose Kasauli because that's where he did much of his writing. Most of his writing was done from Kasauli. It's the only festival which I think is dedicated to certain causes. One being the education of the girl child, and secondly, the ecology, preserving the ecology of Kasauli and the region, which is a very ecologically fragile area. And third, of course, is dedicated to the great Indian soldier. So we have these kind of, these firsts for a literary festival in the country. I won't mention all the people who are coming here, but I'll just highlight some of the sessions that we've got. We've got a very, very strong session starting, a strong opening day on Friday the 12th. We've got, of course, one session on Khushwant Singh himself with some of his very close friends who are in that session. And then we've got Mr. Dulat, who is written a book. He, as you know, was the head of RAW, former head of RAW. He's a very good speaker. He's going to interact with General Atta Hasnain, who is, a well-known, marvelous speaker, highly decorated army officer. And that's it's called On the Spy Chronicles. That's a book which was co-authored by Mr. Dulat and his Pakistani counterpart, who's been much in the news because the Pakistani counterpart, I forget his name now.
Durrani.
Huh? Durrani. He is now being barred from leaving the country, I think. So I saw in the paper, for having talked about his career as a spy chief. I don't think Mr. Dulat has had any such restrictions on his.
Give them the name of the session, Rahul. It's Two Spooks and the Generals.
Yeah, two spooks and the generals. So that's the name of the session. And then we've got Gurcharan Das on his latest book. He's a well-known figure. He was a big man in the corporate world, gave it up to become a writer, and he's become a well-known writer. He writes a column also in the Times of India. So he's there. And then what I should mention earlier is that the theme of this particular festival, kind of overriding theme, though it's not, it's not restricted to that, is the rise of women, the Nadi, the rise of women, and the era of Me Too, hashtag Me Too. So that's the theme of this. We'd like to have some sort of theme for every festival. So this one is the theme that we decided, the rise of women. And so we've got a session on the opening day on that women's rights are human rights. And that is got Maya Daruwala, who's going to be, who's a very prominent human rights lawyer, human rights activist. She'll be interacting with Prem Shankar Jha, well-known journalist and former editor-in-chief of the Times of the Hindustan Times.
And Rahul, sorry, if I can just interject, I think most people talk of women's rights, over the years, but no one stops to think that what women are asking for are just basic human rights.
Yeah.
So that is something that is going to set the tone for the festival on day one. That's why I said, day one is going to be a very interesting day.
Right. And Maya Daruwala, just an aside, happens to be the daughter of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw. So she'll be there. Then we've got Mark Tully, everyone must know, BBC, legendary BBC correspondent in India for many years. He's made India his home really. So he's been before to the LITFEST. He's coming again this year. And then we've got
Mark Tully doing Jairam Ramesh's book.
Yeah, that's right.
The lady behind the man.
Yeah, but that's all in the program.
Oh, sorry, the man behind.
Yeah.
The man behind the lady. Yeah.
That's all in the. It's all in the program and the press note also. But I just thought I would highlight some of these sessions. Then another of Kushwant Singh's great passions and concerns was Indo-Pak relations, Indo-Pak ties. In the first 3 years of the LITFEST, we were able to invite Pakistani writers and prominent Pakistanis to come. Sadly, because of the freeze in Indo-Pak ties, we've not been able to have them coming this time. But we continue having something on Indo-Pak ties in some form or the other. And this time we've got a book written on Zulfikar Ali Bhutto by Sayyida Hamid, who is a former member of the Planning Commission. She's coming up to talk about Bhutto. I forget the title of the book. I think, what's it called? The Hanging of Bhutto, or anyway.
It's on the program.
Yeah, it's on the program. It's a book on Bhutto. And she'll be interacting with Seema Mustafa, who's also a very prominent journalist. And then another subject that we always like to have is something on heritage. Apart from environment, which I mentioned, we also like to have something on heritage. We've had people like Dr. B.N. Goswami, famous, well known in Chandigarh, and not only Chandigarh, all over the country, who came in the past. This time we've got, the subject is Hidden Treasures of the Himalayas. Um, so that is the title
That's
of the session.
ecology. They're talking on the Himalayan National Park and then the rare orchids and flowers of the Himalayas.
And birds also, no?
Well, primarily,
Vikram, yeah.
it is primarily flowers and
Yeah.
they'll be talking about the,
Yeah. And then going on with the rise of women, we've got these young ladies who are one of them is I think 12-year-old conqueror of Everest.
Purna.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
and a film was made on that.
Gen Next Tipar, they'll
Yeah.
be setting an example to the grown-ups actually.
Yeah. And this another remarkable young girl from the Andamans and Nicobar Islands.
Yeah, she was a poor tribal, Matrina, very poor tribal girl. Then she was picked up by Rahul Bose's organization, the film
You're Jenny.
actor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and she was educated at top school of design in Bangalore, Shrishti School of Design, where incidentally the brigadier's daughter also went there. And now she's a hotshot at the Nicobar boutique in Delhi.
So what is her name again?
Matrina Martin.
Matrina Martin.
Yeah.
Very
And
unusual lady.
Yeah, the young actress who plays Purna in the film, Aditi Nanda, she's going to be there
Okay.
as well. And of course we have Anuja Chauhan,
Oh yeah.
who's,
Yeah.
made, young girl who's made such a success of a certain genre of writing.
And then of course we've got big names like Navjot Sidhu, who's also coming, and he's going to be taking part in 2 sessions. I think one on Punjab, naturally, on what his vision of the future of Punjab is. He's going to be interacting with Kanwar Sandhu, who used to be my reporter. I was at one time editor of the Indian Express here in Chandigarh many years ago, and he was my star reporter, and of course he's gone places now. He'll be coming to Kasauli and interacting with
And Ishwar
Navjot
Desai is also on that.
same panel.
So because Ishwar's written a book on Jallianwala Bagh, and there's a book called Punjabis Punjabiyat, which was done by Rahul's father, Bhushan Singh, edited by Rahul's sister Maladaya. So that's a new book these are 2 new books that have just come out. So the session is...
Of what he wrote about Punjab before.
Yeah, based on that and then looking into the future.
Yeah. So that's Navjot, Kishwar Desai and Kanwar Sandhu will be talking about Punjab. Then we've got Karan Thapar. Is he coming on the 13th? Yeah, he's coming on the 13th. Karan Thapar, and he'll be interacting with Manishankar Iyer.
Yeah,
who's
What combination?
there's more than the open date.
No, we've got, I think, the main things I mentioned. The opening day, yeah. So then we've got Karan Thapar with Manishankar Iyer. Manishankar is again a regular who's been, coming to our LitFest. So he's going to be interacting because Karan Thapar has just brought out a new book on Devil's Advocate. He does that famous program on TV, Devil's Advocate. Then going back to women again, we've got a session on foreign women who made India their home. Unusual subject, so this again based on a book, Women Who Made India Home.
European Videshinis.
Yeah.
There are 2 books, and one was a book on Sister Nivedita. It was
Yeah.
also covered in European Videshinis. But interestingly, in Rahul's home in Rajville, I just found a book written by Bhushan Singh, the Sahibs Who Loved India. And in his introduction he says, sorry Rahul, I'm interrupting, but in his introduction he says that when he was editor of the weekly, he'd invited the foreigners in India to write about their impressions of India. And by the time all those pieces came in, he had left the weekly. And then Philip Knightley.
Yeah.
Philip Knightley was editor of the Sunday Times in London. I don't know how Philip Knightley got hold of the whole set of pieces. So he gave it to Rahul, and Rahul, of course, without looking at it, just packed it off to his father in Delhi. So that turned into a book. And what's interesting is that you have people like Lord Mountbatten and a lot of interesting names. So this seems to be, now a continuation of that on the women's front.
Then we've got Shashi Tharoor, of course, who I don't even have to mention who that is, talking about his latest book on why I am a Hindu, or on his
Tharoorism is on Hinduism.
Yeah. So that's it. Then a session of another something which interested Khushwant Singh a lot is our neglect of the Northeast. How people from the Northeast are not really a part of the mainstream yet, and how they feel alienated. So we've got a whole session on that with Janvi Barua and Sanjoy Hazarika, both of whom are experts on the Northeast. But Sanjoy Hazarika doesn't paint such a bleak picture. He says there is reasons for hope, and that the Northeasterners, the people are becoming a little more part of the mainstream and not feeling as if they're regarded as foreigners.
So this book is called Strangers No More. His earlier book was Strangers in the Mist. That was the time they were really treated as strangers. So it's a good sign.
And then we've also got Salman Khurshid, again, very well known.
This is a very powerful session.
Yeah. And this is again on issues like triple talaq and
FGM, female genital mutilation, which is prevalent in the Bora community.
Yeah.
And we've got Shaira Banu, who fought for triple talaq. She's coming.
Yeah.
And there are activists, Masuma, Ramalvi, Zakia Soman, and Shami Baveja, PhD, is moderating the session because this is a subject she feels passionately about. And based on Salman Khurshid's new book on triple talaq, so we're going to have an interesting male, slightly
and on the Supreme
point of view as well.
Yeah, on the Supreme Court judgments on adultery. What are the other issues that there are? Sector 377, adultery, and the Sabarimala, keeping women out. So that's also going to be taken up. And then one issue on migrations, which brings in partition, and it's called Migrations East and West.
No, the madness of migration.
No.
Yeah, because there's one doctor, Anil Kala from Punjab, who's studying you're familiar, yeah. So he's studying the effect of this partition on people both on this side of the border as well as on the Pakistan side of the border. Then we've got Reena Nanda, who's written her own family story from Quetta to Delhi. And then we have a person, Shalim from Hussain from the Northeast, who's going to talk, who comes from, they owned an island in the Brahmaputra. And he's going to give his personal story and, what they have gone through. So it's going to be East and West, yeah.
Then we have a session on yoga, because it's the 100th anniversary of B.K.'s Iyengar,
So there's a book, a biography coming out on him. So, and Khushwant Singh, everyone thinks he was a tennis player, which he was, but earlier on, he was very interested in yoga, and he packed off both his children, were packed off to regular yoga classes, which is something that's not well known.
And then it's the Amrita Pritam Centenary. So we've got Divya Datta and Nirupama
Yes, the TV star.
Yeah.
And Nirupama is really an expert on this subject. So whatever you want to know, we're calling it Hamari Amrita. So whatever you want to know on the session, I think Nirupama is the one to go.
And then for the first time, we are having a session on food and drink. The first time we're having that. Food meaning food which is, peculiar to India itself. That's what the emphasis is going to be. Indian preparations. And drink also. Drink, we've got a very unusual person called Desmond Nazareth, who lives in Goa. And he has discovered that there are alcoholic beverages which are made in India and nobody knows about them. The one that people do know about is cashew feni. But he has he discovered that there is a cactus which, in fact, Khushwant Singh, my father, found the same cactus in Mexico. And he said, how come, we have this cactus in India. In Mexico, they convert it into tequila. That's what tequila is made from, is a cactus called agave, particular cactus. So Desmond also noticed that there's this cactus which grows wild here. Now he set up a plantation of this agave cactus in Andhra Pradesh, and he is making tequila. I've had it, it is superb. I think India is probably the only country apart from Mexico who's now making tequila. He can't call it tequila because that's a brand name. He calls it agave. And then he's also found, you heard of the mahua flower. Now, mahua, I've also been to Bastar here. There, the women there, they brew the mahua flower and make it into a liquor, a very strong liquor. It's a flower which is very sweet, very thick, with thick petals, and they make that into, it's been done for hundreds of years there. So Desmond is making mahua alcohol and mahua liqueur, which I've also had, very good again.
So when we were chatting to Desmond and we said the theme is the rise of women, he said, oh, all my distillers are women. I'm going to talk about them, they fits in perfectly. And the name of this session is the F word and the B word. Wow. Okay, so you can, So the F word is based on a very interesting book called An Indian Sense of Salad, where, we've all heard of fusion food, but this is like a fusion salad where Indian spices are actually used in Western salads. Now that's more unusual. So it's a very unusual book. So that, and of course, Wendell Rodrigues. We know him as the well-known designer. He's got a separate session Rahul will tell you about, but he is a huge foodie. So Wendell is going to also be talking about certain aspects of food and moderating this session.
That's the session basically on food that we are going to have.
Yeah, the F and the B word.
Yeah. So Wendell Rodrigues is another big name. He's a very big name in Goa and now known nationally also as a top designer. So that is all I think I have got here. But I would just like to end by mentioning how we are a really boutique kind of literary festival. We run on a very, very small budget. And the sponsors mainly come from friends of Khushwant Singh, my friends, small amounts that come. The biggest sponsors in this particular festival are the Himachal Pradesh government, number one, and the Meridian Hotel, which is owned by Mrs. Charanjit Singh, who was a very close friend of Khushwant Singh. So otherwise we get small amounts, from various people, and that's how it all adds up. We're even trying to do some crowdfunding, not successful yet, but that's what we're planning to do. So, yeah, so as I said, we run on a very small, tight budget, but we manage to, keep it going every year, year after year. Now, are there any questions?
Ashwini, there's Ashwini. Yeah, Ashwini is one of our volunteers that we can't do without, along with Ajay and Neena and
Kishi, of course.
Sataji sitting over there.
The festival is run entirely by volunteers. Nobody gets paid for anything.
Ashwini is our IT expert, and he keeps coming up with these ideas of crowdfunding and stuff. And if it hasn't happened, the fault is ours, not his.
And Ashmi is also discovered in Kasoli all sorts of histories of the church. He sent.
We have restored that clock also, no?
Yeah, and the clock in the
clock,
church.
yes.
All the details of the
All
church.
begin with that clock only.
Yeah.
And Rahul, show the Rotary certificate because we are dedicated to ecology. I gave you the certificate.
Yeah, we are giving a certificate and planting one tree. Each speaker will get the certificate, and a tree will be planted.
In their name.
A sapling will be planted in their name. So that's a little bit for.
And this is courtesy rotaries.com.
Yeah.
So very unusual website. Yes, and also I just want to tell you, we have one of our key sponsors sitting right here with us in this room. Can you just stand up, please? Sudhir Thakur. Sorry, Sanjay Thakur and his colleagues. Now, they've come in for the first time from Quantum Papers. And none of us can survive without the work that they do. Because the paper that our program, the notebooks you've been given, all that, the paper that you print your articles in. So I think all of us really need to touch their feet because otherwise we'd all be out of jobs.
And they made that paper not from trees, but from stubble. From the stubble.
So it's an eco-friendly.
Yeah.
So it fits in perfectly with and these are the notebooks they've done. The design is
Very nice.
Yeah, Rahul Gopa's our designer who's done our best work. These are the
So, are there any questions that anybody wants to ask?
So what keeps you motivated every year?
Well, what keeps us
our love
motivated?
for Kasoli, our love for Punjab, our love for ecology. And it's different because we call ourselves a festival with a cause. So every year, like we have, the strength of a Nadi, the rise of women in the age of #Me to this year's thing. So every year we try and have a theme that is relevant to what people are talking about.
Yeah.
So I think it's just all these things that keep us motivated and keeping alive the legacy of Khushwant Singh, who was not just a writer and a journalist, but really, he painted a picture of himself, as a womanizer and all, but the people who knew him say the actual truth was the exact opposite. I mean, he's not the kind of guy who would have been named in Me Too, although he would like to be named, perhaps, but, he wasn't. He would wake up at 4 a.m. and the first thing he'd do is he was an animal lover, so he'd feed the cats their milk, show them the brochure. There's a lovely article by him on Kasoli and the dogs in Kasoli in our brochure.
Sheru?
Yeah. So this is the brochure that, for the speakers that we're bringing out for the festival. So I've lost my trend of thought, but anyway.
He loved animals.
Also, I'd like to mention.
Yeah. So to keep alive he loved animals. He believed in, he believed in the education of women, giving them equal opportunities. He knew the names, botanical names of all the trees and plants. So Rahul's little niece Naina, at the age of 4, because she would go for walks with him to Lodi Garden in Delhi, she knew the botanical names of everything. And naturally, I think that memory training stood her in good stead. She's a professor at St. Stephen's today. So, yeah.
And also I'd like to mention the Kasoli Club, the venue, which is the people who come up for the first time to Kasoli, and Shobha Day, for instance, could not believe this was such a beautiful venue, there. Because the sessions are held on the terrace, just near alongside the club, with a beautiful view of the plains of Chandigarh and Kalka that you see from there. So the club has been one of our big supporters, and the cantonment also. So I shouldn't forget the Kasoli Club, which is such a beautiful setting for the...
I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a festival. Brigadier Anand, 7 years ago, was the first brigadier who instantly said, yes, you must do it, and you must do it here. So, and after him, all the other brigadiers have been amazingly supportive, and therefore we are also dedicated to the Indian soldier as a gesture of gratitude from our end to the cantonment and the services.
I think it's the only Lit Fest which is taking place in a cantonment in the country.
And perhaps the only one dedicated to causes.
Yeah.
Because we didn't look at it as just a Lit Fest. And then I think the amazing people you meet at the festival, the speakers, they do some amazing work. So this is one way of projecting their work. Like everyone's heard of the Shashi Tharoors and Karan Thapars. But the people who are coming like Maya Daruwala, I don't know how many have heard of her. She's doing absolutely quietly doing the most amazing work. So there are Gurcharan Das has written some fantastic books, but although he was head of Procter and Gamble Asia, I think, and but a very low-key kind of a person. So there will be some really amazing stories coming out at the festival.
And I hope all of you can come there to Kasoli. And we don't charge anything in Kasoli. It's open to everybody. All is there. If you're not a member of the club, they have a very small nominal charge for entry to the club. Otherwise, it's sort of open to everybody. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we do get a large number of people coming to the Lit Fest.
And I don't know, one more request, if it's possible, I don't know. But, if tomorrow you could talk about day 1, and if, whatever, and day 1 you can talk about, whatever is to follow, that kind of thing. Because most of our speakers, they start coming up tomorrow. Most of them will be here on the 12th.
I forgot Syed Mirza. Sorry, Syed Mirza is also coming up. He's a different generation, but I remember when I was in Chandigarh in the 80s, he did, those days there was only Doordarshan, there wasn't all these cable channels. And there was a program called Nukkad. I don't know whether you remember that. He is the director of that, Nukkad, and he's also made some, path-breaking films, new age kind of films. His names I forget now, but Kisko Gussa Aata Hai. What was that?
Albert Pinto.
Albert Pinto. Kyun Gussa Aata Hai. That one, and there was something also, Salim something, but anyway, he made these, but Nukkad is the one which stands in my memory as, realistic films that Doordarshan had never shown before. So he's coming up.
And he's done a book on his story.
He's written a book,
Sessions
so
are
it's going to
based
be,
on books.
Is it an autobiography?
yeah, it's going to be on,
Yeah,
on his
yeah.
book. That, and I think that Sudhir Mishra might be coming
Yeah.
to interact with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been in conversation with him, so he might be coming too. And Divya Datta we mentioned it.
Divya Datta's done it.
She was in last year also.
She was there, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for coming, everybody. We have there's some, I think some food behind.